Hey everybody, Motorport 59 here. It's been a while since I've done a video. I've been really busy. My life has become very hectic, and I want to talk about a couple of the things that have caused some of that chaos. And some of that chaos, two parts of that chaos were caused by our healthcare system. Not the insurance. When Barack Obama, if you'll remember, when Barack Obama was campaigning and pushing Obamacare in the beginning, it was about fixing. He promised to fix the healthcare system. He didn't promise to fix the healthcare insurance system, which Obamacare didn't do anyway. All it did was make the healthcare insurance system more complicated for almost everyone. I know it did for me. Even though at that time I had insurance through my company, and I should say it made it more complicated for my company. It didn't really have that effect on me until after I retired. The first issue with the broken healthcare system, just before New Year's, my dad got sick. He had a bladder problem, bleeding bladder. It was a pretty scary sight, and my dad's not a spring chicken anymore. He's 84 years old. And by the time I got over to his house, things were not pleasant. And he, being a hard-headed guy that he is, didn't want to call a doctor or anything. I got over there, and he said this had been going on for a while. I don't know how much blood he lost or anything. So I called an ambulance. He ended up being hospitalized for a couple of days until they got his urine clear again and got him on some antibiotics. He's still dealing with all of that. It was a really crappy deal for him. And what got me where his case is concerned is that it's easy to call our older generation, the people of my dad's age, hard-headed, and they are. It's a legitimate complaint. But where this is concerned, because I told him, he said, oh, yeah, well, this has happened a couple of other times, but it went away. And the reason he never did anything about it is the healthcare system is just too complicated. And he grew up in an era where you didn't have all the kind of things we have now and country doctors and all that. And it was a lot different. Your doctors actually cared about you. And I'm not saying doctors don't care about you today, but it is a lot different. It's a lot different than it was when I was a young adult in my 20s. And he just didn't want to deal with the headache. And he figured, well, let's stop doing this. And so I'm not going to tell anybody. Well, this time it got really bad. It is so difficult to wade through all the crap you have to wade through to get anywhere. And especially the plan he has, you have to have referrals for this and referrals for that. He was in the hospital with this issue, and he still had to have a referral to see a urologist. And it's like, he'd already seen one in the hospital. Why didn't they just tell him, go to this urologist? He still had to have referrals, which took a few days, and he ended up seeing two different urologists. The one that he saw in the hospital, he had to go see again, and then he had to make an appointment with the one that's going to be his permanent, regular urologist. And he's frustrated, and I don't blame him. And I was frustrated right along with him. I was dealing with all this, and I almost can't blame Dad for just not wanting to mess with it. And I talked to him and told him, you can't not go through it. Call me next time, and I'll deal with it for you. My wife works for Kaiser, and she has the ability to go through, to cut through some of the red tape and get things done. And she did that for him on a couple of occasions where this was concerned, to kind of speed things up. And I was really happy for that. But, the things that my dad had to deal with, just because he was just too frustrated with the way the healthcare system works. Our healthcare system is broken. Our healthcare insurance wasn't broken. We wouldn't need our healthcare insurance system to be so comprehensive if healthcare itself wasn't so broken. It should not be so complicated, and it should not be so expensive. People say, yeah, but we have the best healthcare in the world. Well, that may be, but we pay way too much for it. And I'm not saying that we should go to the single payer. I don't agree with that at all. I don't think the government should be involved at all in our healthcare. But there are ways to go about bringing these costs down, and no one is pursuing that. No one wants to piss off the medical field. No one wants to piss off healthcare. No one wants to do anything to make anybody mad. And I just don't get it. I don't understand why I'm doing this. Now, the second piece was, as you know, most of you, I was hospitalized in 2020 with COVID. While I was there, I ended up with bilateral viral pneumonia and bilateral bacterial pneumonia at the same time, and I damn near died. And I was in there for 24 days. When I got out, I started getting bills from the hospital and all the doctors and blah, blah, blah. And in early 21, I had already paid out quite a bit of money, out of pocket stuff. Then I get a bill from the hospital for $25,000. And that was just for the hospital, essentially for my room and board. And the total bill for that was $285,000 for 24 days of room and board. The doctors that saw me, that was all billed differently. That was all a separate thing. The insurance did their part, and I paid mine. And my insurance actually capped out. I had retired. The company gave me a gap plan for free, but it had a cap on it. And while I was in the hospital, it exceeded that cap. In defense of United Healthcare, they ended up paying some expenses that they were not obliged to pay. So good on United Healthcare. But anyway, so this 25 grand, I started trying to get hold of the hospital to try to work out some kind of a payment plan. Their business office was closed because of COVID, so I never could get hold of anybody. So eventually for a couple of months, I sent them $250. And I finally got in touch with someone, or actually someone got in touch with me about it. And the lady who was on the phone, we're going to try to work out a payment plan. And she said, well, what was this concerning? Why were you in the hospital? I said, I had COVID. And she goes, well, that's not even in the records here. Are you kidding me? This is what's wrong with our healthcare system. This is one of the myriad problems with our healthcare system. The right hand doesn't know what the left hand's doing. So she said, I'm going to put that in the notes and I'll resubmit this, and you may not hear from us again. And I didn't. I didn't hear from them again. That was in July of 2021. I didn't hear from them again until this is January 19th. So I didn't hear from them until the 17th. And it was the collections. Hey, you still owe us this money. What are you going to do about this? And I said, well, I was under the impression that I wasn't going to hear from you guys anymore. And a bunch of yada yada and me getting mad and stuff. And I finally talked to someone, and they said, well, we didn't know this and we didn't know that. And they were sending bills to the wrong address. And so I told my wife, well, it looks like I'm going to have to pay this. Well, she did a deep dive into this, and she found that through the CARES Act, C-A-R-E-S, the CARES Act that was passed by the federal government during COVID, that any hospital that received funding through the CARES Act was barred from charging patients who were in the hospital with COVID for any more than beyond anything that their insurance paid. So she looked that up, and the hospital I was in received government funding. That Dignity Health, they received $1.2 billion from the CARES Act. And so I may not have to pay this. Still not sure how it all is going to shake itself out. I didn't see any exceptions in it, and neither did she. And I contacted Shannon Grove, my local senator and state senator, and started there. And I've given them the information, and they're going to look into it for me. But whether or not I end up having to pay this, which I'm not going to pay them anyway, to hell with them. I don't need good credit anymore, so I'm not going to do it. And I've paid in 2021. I paid I don't have the numbers, but I paid about $13,000 out of my pocket in 2021 in medical bills, and a pretty good amount of that was towards issues surrounding my COVID, doctors and home health nurses and all, yada yada. But anyway, no matter how this goes, our healthcare system is broken. When the billing department doesn't know why you were in the hospital, someone isn't doing their job. And I have all the medical records. I have the whole story of why I was in the hospital and what I went through. And so there's no way of them denying that that's why I was there. And we'll see how it turns out. But our healthcare system is broken. I don't see anyone, Republicans or Democrats, doing anything to try and fix it. Obamacare, as I said, did nothing for the healthcare industry. It's still just as broken and corrupt, in my opinion, as it already was. I don't know that these hospitals aren't purposefully not saying things were related to COVID so they won't get stuck with these bills. I don't know. Maybe I'm all wet, but I do know one thing. Either way this goes, and especially if it does go in my favor, I'm going to contact the local investigative reporters, because people need to know that if this is the case, they don't have to pay these bills. That they need to make sure that they actually owe this money and that everything has been done for to get them covered under the CARES Act, because that's why it was passed. I mean, I don't have $25,000. Most people don't. I have a pretty good pension. I'm doing okay. But I don't have 25 grand laying around. And should I have to come up with some amount of money or whatever, it would put a damper on the way my family, my wife and I get to live. And imagine the people who don't have as good a pension as I have, or the financial freedom that I have. Even though I don't make a ton of money, I don't have to spend a ton of money. But imagine the people who do. Imagine the people who have, 3 or 4 kids or whatever, and all these other expenses that they have that got all screwed up during COVID, and they're paying money that they shouldn't have to be paying. It's a mess. I think that hospitals, I think that the healthcare industry, like a lot of other industries, is corrupt at the top. I'm not saying that the doctors themselves are, but management, I think they'll do what they can to get away with what they can and not have to put up any expenses they don't want to. They got that $1.2 billion and they want to use it. They don't want to have to put it out to people like me. What do you think? Did you have to deal with any of this? Did you have COVID? If you had COVID and you're being billed, have you looked into this? Because I wouldn't have done it. I wouldn't have known where to start. I'd have just said, okay, I owe you this money. If it wasn't for my wife, I don't know. I'm sure I would just be pissing and moaning about it, which I still am, but I wouldn't have that. Look into this stuff. Make sure that your care provider, your hospital, is billing you correctly, is saying that COVID was part of this. Always look at your itemized bills anyway. But I had no idea that this was all involved under the CARES Act, which I pissed and moaned about when they passed, but it might help me out. But that's what it's for. I didn't know that. I didn't realize that's what it was for. But now I do, and I hope that Shannon Grove's office is able to get me going down the right path. Anyway, what do you think? Let me know in the comments below. Shoot me an email at motorpoet59@gmail.com. Like, share, subscribe. Click on the bell if you want to be notified of future content. And we'll see you all later, and I hope it's never at a freaking hospital.